I look back and I think in every part of my career it was all about finding ways to challenge how other educators saw Aboriginal children in schools, but also to challenge Aboriginal children about how they saw themselves in schools as well. For me, it was born out of very much a personal circumstance. What a morning, hey? You know, when I was a 17-year-old kid finishing high school in Bundaberg, I'm remembering the time when the maths teacher throws their advanced maths paper down on did and says, "Oh, Chris Zara got 75% for that test. That must have been an easy test." And all of us laughing at the time, but not realising that I had received a message from that teacher that I hadn't realised that I'd received. And he had sent a message that he probably didn't even realise that he sent. And the message was, you know, we didn't really expect that you would get that. And so I never really did. The perception is not that flash, as you can imagine. It's very much the negative stereotype. When we talk about Aboriginal children in schools, it's chronic non-attenders, chronic underachievers, a little bit aggressive, very much disengaged, all of these kinds of things that are very much a stereotype that exists. Schools can be this place with the potential to create and nurture such greatness in young Aboriginal children, yet we can be so stifled by these kind of negative perceptions that exist, to the extent that we can actually stop young black kids from believing in themselves. That's a tremendous tragedy, and one day we'll overcome that. It's wonderful to be here in this part of the world. I'll start, as I should, by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and say thanks. It's wonderful to meet you, and you're going to hear about some marvellous stories, in fact. And you know that it's not only about the story of what happened in my time at Cherbourg, it's about we truly will change the tide of low expectations of Aboriginal children and Torres Strait Islander children in schools. This is something that we can do, and this is something that we will do. I firmly believe that. At the Institute, we're determined that we're going to change the tide of low expectation by working with other school leaders to arm them with the belief and the capacity that our children are bright, they are worth investing in, and that we can project them into a stronger, smarter future. The first couple of weeks here, there were children literally running up and down on top of the two-storey buildings, and there was no pride in the school. There was no sense of, this is our school and we love our school and this is where we come to learn. There was none of that, and that had to change. When I came to Cherbourg in 1998, I saw the same thing in these children here that I saw in schools right throughout the country.
I don't care if your mum let you stay home. I don't let you stay home and get to school.
Teachers who were residing over classrooms where Aboriginal children were failing constantly. You had and still do principals presiding over schools that had Aboriginal children failing constantly. You have district directors and those kinds of people, and people at the central office level presiding over schools and regions and districts with Aboriginal children that were failing constantly, and this was never being questioned. I listened to teachers explain to me why children were failing so dismally and why they weren't coming to school. And they'd say things like, the parents don't value education, the kids don't value education, all of these kinds of things. And every time we discussed or we looked for reasons, we were pointing the finger outwards. And this didn't make sense to me because we didn't have any control over what was happening outside the school gate. We had to be intent on focusing on the things that we did control and being the best that we could be at that. They were the strong and smart, and they were what we say in our song, young and black and deadly. I guess it started from the very first day. The very first thing that I said to kids on parade is that the most important thing that you will learn from me is that you can be successful and you can be Aboriginal. When we measured attendance, I'd write the number of absences for a particular class on the board. We're all black here, aren't we? Yeah. All of us are. Hands up if you think that's a great thing. Hands up if you love being Aboriginal. Hands down. If we're all Aboriginal in here, which we are, that doesn't mean that we have to be at the bottom. It doesn't mean that we have to be missing from school. It doesn't mean that we have to put up with rubbish. It doesn't mean that we have to expect ourselves to be on the ground, because that's not about who we are. And what I expect from you is better than what I see at the moment. And you tell me every week that that's what you expect from yourself. Well, stop telling me about it and give it to me. This is the challenge I'm bringing to you at the moment. The attendance in the school is getting better, but it's still not good enough. We'd established a high expectations culture, and we had a school motto that was strong and smart. So at some level, you know, they are just words, but at another level, it lets me say to children individually, look, you can't tell me that you're strong and smart. You've got to be the words that come out of your mouth as well. And that meant working harder in the classroom, being respectful to teachers, being respectful to each other, getting to school every day and being more respectful to ourselves as human beings and as young Aboriginal men and young Aboriginal women. And that included the staff, that included the tuck shop lady, the groundsman, the teacher aides, the teachers. It was all about colluding with this strong, smart, young, black and deadly Aboriginal identity.
Write that. Good sentence.
You know, it's not rocket science. We had kids turning up to school hungry and couldn't learn because of that. Well, just give them some toast and juice or Milo in the morning, you know. Attendance was a really chronic issue. Well, let's get out and chase the parents up and find out where the kids are. Let's offer rewards for those kids who are coming to school. If kids are having blocked ears and that, let's just buy more tissues and let's just get them to blow their nose every day. You know, if kids are highly strung, let's just have a program where we can do silent sitting and get them to meditate for a couple of minutes before every session.
It tense the muscles in your toes, make them really tight, and relax.
These are kinds of things that any educator who's worth their salt should just do.
Who can remember some of the spirits from this area? Hand up, no calling out. Jaden. Tall man. Al. Janjiri. What is it? Mundagara.
By implementing an Aboriginal Studies program here at the school, we were able to give Indigenous people a voice. First concept we look at is pre-Sherberg, which looks at Aboriginal culture.
Inside his belly, he eats a lot of ants.
Then we look at government policies and practices. An example is looking at the Act and different policies that were put in place.
What sort of job was there available for people who could just learn to read, know their counting? They learned how to write so they could write letters to the superintendent for permission. They learned how to speak English so when they went out to work they could speak English to their boss.
We have artists from the community come in and they're sharing their art, but they're also teaching techniques of Aboriginal art or Torres Strait Islander art to children. We have a dance group at our school and they're learning corroboree, they're learning the dances from the community. The Aboriginal Studies teacher takes the children out in the community. They might go down to the waterhole and might learn a dreaming story about that particular waterhole.
And when I was a small boy, I heard this story called Buyibara. This rocks over here is very sacred to the Waka Waka people.
When we first came here, you know, you'd ask children questions and they put their heads down in shame and stuff like that. And now when they're standing up there and they're being praised and rewarded and what have you, they're proud to be standing up there, and we talk about being Aboriginal and being proud of who you are.
The reason why Arthur's won the Principal's Award, because he's always works very hard in class, doesn't he, Mrs. Sarah? He's always at school, he's always having a go, okay? So a big, big cheer for Arthur for being strong and smart. You know, even if all of this awful stuff that people describe about Aboriginal kids' households and all of that is true, and some of it is, then that to me that says even more so that we've got to give these kids one place in their lives that has structure, that has a positive kind of love and warmth, where there is high expectations, where kids can predict what's going to happen, you know, where they know that if they act positively, there's going to be rewards for that, and if they act negatively, there's going to be a consequence for that. So it's about controlling the things that we do and being excellent at that. In fact, it's nice to know that through the work that we've done at the Institute, trying to spread this high expectations agenda and this stronger, smarter message that, you know, there's schools across the country that are doing great things, and the plan is to get more and more schools influenced by what they're doing, to the extent that there's a critical mass of schools doing great things in Indigenous education.
Okay, upper school, how many unexplained absences? Well done, guys. Thanks very much. That's what I'm talking about when I say strong and smart. We get the unexplained absences down to 0. We make sure we get the notes back if we're away. We make sure that we're at school and not staying at home just because we feel slack. Alright? In upper school, thanks for being strong and smart.
Creating better conditions in Aboriginal communities is everybody's business. You know, if you're a policeman sent to a community, if you're a health worker working in a community, or a teacher working in an Aboriginal community, we've got to purge any sort of mindset that second rate is somehow good enough for this community. And when more people stop accepting that, then hopefully we'll see the sort of change that we deserve.